Hey everyone, today I am going to attempt to go through my entire jazz collection with you, talk about how I stumbled upon the record, and talk a little bit about the record itself. I'm relatively new to collecting records. I've been collecting records for about 3 years now, and so I've dabbled a little bit into jazz. It's not my core genre, but it's a genre that I love collecting and I love diving deeper into. And so today I tried my best to categorize jazz into subgenres. Obviously, some of the records are genre fluid and can fit into multiple genres of jazz. As you can see, this is my entire jazz collection so far. So if I am missing one of your favorite jazz records, let me know down in the comments. And if you found something that you would love to add to your collection, also let me know in the comments. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Mike and I'm also an avid specialty coffee drinker. And before I dive into my collection, let me first grab a coffee. So here I've got a local roast from the roastery Light Roast here in Düsseldorf, Germany. The bean comes from Peru. It's a fully washed bean with notes of apple, marmalade, bergamot, and orange. So when I drink it, it's got that sour note to it, a little bit fruity. It's not something that's super experimental, nor is it something that's bland and boring. It's a nice everyday coffee if you are into specialty coffee. Cheers. I'm starting off with a category I call pop/vocal jazz, something that's a bit more accessible to the average listener, something that's a bit more radio friendly and a little bit more mainstream nowadays. For example, Frank Sinatra or George Benson. So here I've got the Frank Sinatra Collected record. This is essentially a compilation of some of his best hits, including My Funny Valentine, Strangers in the Night, of course, Fly Me to the Moon, and That's Life. This is one of the first records I got when I started collecting records, just because I was familiar with his hits and I just wanted a compilation of his greatest songs. And so this version has gold discs, which I find quite nice, very elegant looking, a double LP as well, and a great intro if you are just a surface level Sinatra listener, just like myself. But yeah, this is a great pressing as well. And as I started to dive deeper into Frank Sinatra's catalog, as well as discovering music in general, I stumbled upon the book 1001 Albums You Need to Listen to Before You Die, which I've got down there. And this is the very first album mentioned in this book. It is Frank Sinatra in the Wee Small Hours. It's one of the very first concept albums ever really recorded. And so this album is very somber yet soulful. This is also one of the first records I got from the label Dole, which basically represses a bunch of classic jazz albums for very cheap. I have to say, like, I was a bit skeptical about the price, but as soon as I spun the record, the quality was pretty decent. I have a pretty basic setup, but if you are just starting out your collection and are into jazz, I'd recommend looking out for this label if you don't care about the pressing. But yeah, this is a great listen front to back if you like that more relaxed version of Sinatra. Another little compilation here, a budget one from Nat King Cole, iconic vocalist in the jazz scene. He is on repeat during Christmas time, and so this contains some of his greatest hits like Mona Lisa, Love. I got this in Berlin at a place called Melting Point, and it was part of a bundle of 10. I think I paid a couple bucks for this one, but it's a great compilation to just play in the background. And another part of that bundle is this one from Dean Martin. This is the Best of Dean Martin, part of the Rat Pack, legendary jazz vocalist together with Sinatra. So yeah, this contains songs such as Sway, Volare, and of course, That's Amore. So for now, I'm a surface level Dean Martin fan. And so this is a great compilation of some of his hits. Another legendary jazz vocalist is Billie Holiday. I love her somber, lower register. Her voice is iconic. And the reason why I picked this up is because when I was in Budapest, I learned that her song Gloomy Sunday was actually written by a Hungarian and is one of the most depressing songs of all time. It's known as the Hungarian suicide song. So Gloomy Sunday is essentially an English interpretation of that song, and she performs it fantastically. I picked this up at Good Mood Records in Cologne for €1. There was a Euro sale, and so this was one of the pickups I got. So this was a great find, I think. Now, moving on to George Benson. He's very accessible here in Germany. I see his records all the time, and so I just needed to grab his classics to start off with. This one, however, I picked up at Dearborn Music in Detroit. And so this is featuring his hit song, Breezin'. Front to back, it's a fantastic play. It's a more upbeat, soulful. He was known for his guitar playing skills, but he eventually moved on to more vocals and more R&B. Yeah, this is a great listen if you like that more upbeat, jazzy style. And this is the must-listen record from George Benson, in my opinion. This one I also picked up at Goodman Records in Cologne. This was the follow-up to Breezin'. It's a bit more improvised, orchestral, and leaning a bit more into the pop direction. But all in all, a great listen front to back. Finally, I also have Living Inside Your Love. This one definitely is a bit more romantic. It's got the song Soulful Strut, which I really love, as well as a cover of A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke. And then finally it ends with Unchained Melody, a very, very romantic song. So this is where he definitely leads into his R&B romantic side, but still a jazz legend in my books. And then you have Kenny G. Now, from what I've seen, Kenny G is not the jazz aficionado's favorite jazz artist, but he's very accessible. He's a very well-known saxophone player, and Duo Tones is the record that really put him on the map. It features one of his most iconic songs, Songbird, and so this is definitely the record you want to listen to if you are into Kenny G or like that more accessible jazz, if I can call it that. Now, I didn't know this, but Marilyn Monroe also sang, and so when I saw this at my local charity store, I was like, okay, that's interesting. So this is basically a collection of the songs that she sang in her films. This one is a triple LP box with hits like Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. She's actually a pretty decent vocalist, not the best, but she can carry a tune. And after listening to her sing, this really rounded her personality in my books. I knew her as an actress, as a model, and so she was truly a Renaissance woman in my books. So yeah, definitely give a few of her songs a listen. And to end the pop/vocal jazz category, I've got this recording from Blue Note in Milan. I went to this jazz club to treat a friend who had his bachelor party there. And as I was browsing the very small record section, I stumbled upon this record, noticed that this record was filled with songs that I recognized. So they were essentially covers. And this guy, Nick the Nightfly, was literally standing right beside me and was like, "Hey man, that's a great record." And I was like, "Oh, thanks." And he's like, "Oh, by the way, that's me." And so I was like, no way, like this is the guy that orchestrated this performance. This is actually the 20th anniversary edition, featuring these yellow discs to match the brass ensemble in the front. Very nice guy. He kindly signed it for me as well, right there. So shout out to Nick and the band. And I'm not sure if you can pick it up anywhere else except for the Blue Note Jazz Club. You could probably pick it up online, but if you get the chance, check it out. Great live performance. Next category is swing jazz. This originated from New Orleans, widely popularized by Louis Armstrong, and so I've got a handful of records, which I will get to right now. First up is Ellen Lewis. This is an absolute classic by two legendary jazz vocalists, Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong. Don't need an explanation there. This is also released by Dole, so I got this super cheap at Rough Trade in London. The cover is a bit different though. It looks more like a painting. The original actually features them in the picture. If you do like Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, they are a match made in heaven, so definitely pick this one up if you are just starting out your jazz collection. Next up, I got a budget record from Louis Armstrong featuring his hit Mac the Knife, which I've come to learn was originally written in German for an orchestra. And considering how upbeat and happy sounding this song is, it was actually in fact written about a killer and his motives. And so yeah, it features a few other songs, but this is part of a bundle that I got for cheap, so thought I would pick up a little bit of Louis Armstrong to start out my collection. Last record of the swing category is Travelin' by Echoes of Swing, which comprises of Colin Dawson, Chris Hopkins, Bant Lutsky, and Oliver Muse. So I was invited to a jazz club in Cologne, and Chris Hopkins and his group were there to perform. He is an American who I believe spent a lot of time in Germany, speaks fluent German, and so he was performing. And then in the middle of the performance, he was selling his records and CDs. So I picked this one up. This one kind of brings me back to the 20s and 30s, very reminiscent of that time. And of course, he also signed it for me. Next up is what I call soul jazz. So it's leaning into a little bit of the soul direction. It's more smooth. I couldn't properly categorize it in other categories, but I only got 2 records in this category. This is a budget compilation by the legendary guitarist Wes Montgomery, known for his unique picking style on the guitar. I believe I picked this up at a local flea market in Düsseldorf. Wes Montgomery is pretty well known, but for those who don't know, he dabbled into bebop, hard bop, and then of course soul jazz. but because his style was rather soulful, he has heavily influenced R&B and gospel music. And so yeah, if you are into those genres, I can highly recommend any of Wes Montgomery's works. And lastly, I have Back to the Roots by Ramsey Lewis. This album was quite hard to find online just to listen to, and so I just picked this up at Good Mood Records in Cologne, again for €1. I believe the front is missing because it should be black, but this is basically a compilation of covers as well as originals. Ramsey Lewis is a legendary jazz pianist. It features covers of well-known songs like We've Only Just Begun by the Carpenters, as well as Fool on a Hill by the Beatles. Yeah, not a popular record, but a great listen nevertheless. Next up, I've got Chet Baker in Milan. Now, Chet Baker I've seen pop up recently on TikTok. He's a very accessible jazz musician that caters towards millennials, Gen Z. Very smooth, cool jazz. And so this one I picked up fittingly in Milan. Just saw it staring at me, never heard of the record. I got it for a pretty cheap price, and so when I was looking at the record label, it's called Destination Moon, and I was a bit skeptical that it was a bootleg, but it's allowed to be sold on Discogs, so I trust that it's a legit label, but I don't think the pressing is the greatest. I figured, I'm in Milan, why not get it? I believe this is his first recording in Europe, so it's quite iconic in Chet Baker's discography. So yeah, definitely recommend it. Now moving on to categories that jazz aficionados are probably more into, and so I'm speaking to both beginners as well as the experts. I would say I'm rather closer to the beginner side of jazz collecting, and so you'll get your Miles Davises, your John Coltrane's. And so with that, I'm gonna start with the modal jazz category. And what better record to start off with than Love Supreme by John Coltrane. When I was just starting to collect records, I started to look for the most iconic jazz records ever, and this often popped up. And the more I listened to it, the more I enjoyed even more. It's structured very well into 4 parts. It's spiritual, it's confessional. It is a record that was recorded shortly after Coltrane overcame his heroin addiction, and so it was this spiritual awakening that brought him back to God. He grew up Christian. He's not attributed to a specific denomination, but in the notes here, he attributes all of his success and life achievements to God. So this is a record dedicated to God, who he believes is the Love Supreme. Yeah, this is a fantastic record. Like, if you are just a beginner, I highly recommend picking this one up. This version is from Verve. This is obviously a repress, but this is a great recording. It's part of the acoustic sound series, so it's great for audiophiles as well, but it wasn't super expensive. If you want a good sounding version of Love Supreme, I believe this one from the acoustic sound series is a great bang for your buck. And neck and neck with Love Supreme as one of the most iconic jazz records of all time is, of course, Kinda Blue by Miles Davis. I believe this is the best-selling jazz record of all time. This record is recorded by the Avengers of jazz. You have Davis, of course, but then you also have John Coltrane, Bill Evans, Paul Chambers, James Cobb, Cannonball Adderley even. This is crazy. So yeah, this is an easy pickup. I picked this one up in Valletta in Malta at the oldest record shop in the world, D'Amato Records. This was also quite cheap, and I realized that this is also Dole. This is on a blue disc, fittingly, pretty decent pressing, but I knew I had to get this in my collection as soon as possible. So this is one of the first jazz records, if not the first jazz record that I picked up when I started my jazz collection. Continuing on with Miles Davis, I got Sketches of Spain. This one was picked up at Good Mood Records as well. Not for €1, but I knew that this was another classic. This one, of course, has some Spanish influence, Spanish folk to be exact, but it's also very cinematic. It sounds like the soundtrack of a movie, in my opinion. So yeah, this is a genre-bending record from Davis. So if you like cinematic music, if you like Spanish influence, then definitely check out this by Miles Davis. Now, I'm gonna continue with Miles Davis, but I'm gonna start to move into the jazz fusion category. Now, you might have a certain picture in your mind as to what jazz fusion is. So in this video, I've grouped everything that can be considered another genre into this. So yeah, rock, electronic, whatever it might be, I've grouped it into this jazz fusion category. Starting with in Concert by Miles Davis. Funny story about this acquisition. So as you can see here, it says 30 bucks. And on the back at the time, it said $10. And so I went up to the counter, I was like, hey, your old price is on here. Could I get it for a cheaper price? And at the end we negotiated, I think 15 bucks. And so this was picked up at Dearborn Music in Detroit as well. It's a little bit beat up, but what's cool about this one is it has these timing strips. I believe these were sent to radio stations back in the day so they would know how long each song was, but these were also included in the sleeve, so I thought that was quite unique. This is the first record that I own that has these. Don't think it adds any value to the record, but I thought it was quite nostalgic to kind of have these timing strips in the record itself. The music itself, for me, is a bit left field jazz. I love the cover. I got to enjoy it over time, and so yeah, this is a great pickup in my books. And the last one from Miles Davis is Bitches Brew, one of the greatest albums of all time. This is the album that pushed Davis into the jazz fusion genre. It's a double LP, it's an hour and a half long, but it's packed with so much in it. There's a wide variety of sounds, it's extremely influential, and is a great combination of both analog and electronic sounds. So if you are looking for something layered, something different, something just out of this world, definitely pick up Bitches Brew by Miles Davis. I got this at the largest record fair in the world in Den Bosch, the Netherlands. Great place to pick up records, of course. And this is the record that I was eyeing at the time, and so I knew I would get it there. This version, however, is a digital remaster, so not a direct print from the analog recordings, but nevertheless, it's a great record. Next up is Cat by Hiroshi Suzuki. Now, when I was getting into Japanese music, this record came up quite frequently. This record actually wasn't a hit when it first released, but it got re-released in 2015, I believe, and then it all of a sudden became a hit worldwide. So this one I picked up at Rush Hour Records in Amsterdam. It's a very laid-back listen. This is one of my favorite records to play when I'm hosting guests. It's a very easy listen, very laid back. So if you are into Japanese jazz in general, this is an absolute must pick up. Next up is the instrumental version of Sour Soul by Bad Bad Not Good featuring Ghostface Killah. So Bad Bad Not Good are a jazz instrumental group from Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. And Ghostface Killah, legendary hip-hop artist from the Wu-Tang Clan, is the rapper on this record. But this version unfortunately doesn't include any rapping, it's just instrumental, which is easier to play in the background. But I saw this at Kith in Paris, and it was just massively underpriced. I think it was just ticketed wrong, and so it was an easy pickup. Great jazz record in general. Bad Bad Not Good, huge fan. Next up is a recommendation from a barista in Madrid. I went to the record cafe Faraday, and as I was browsing the records, the barista recommended this one. This is Brick Lane by Divorce from New York, a local Madrid electronic artist. This one has a lot of jazz influence, and so I decided to include it here, but it's a mix of house, electronic, jazz. It reminds me of someone walking through the streets of New York. So if you're into that upbeat house, jazz kind of style, definitely recommend this one. Also recommend Faraday if you are in Madrid. It's one of my all-time favorite record cafes that I've been to. Next up is a rather recent pickup. I was recently in Athens, and as I was researching jazz music from Greece, this record came up. This is Tea Garden by Kepler Is Free. This is actually their debut album, and so it wasn't available online, so I decided to just DM the group on Instagram. They don't have a whole lot of followers, and so long story short, I was able to get it in person by their keyboardist, Nick. So shout out to Nick. It's an EP, it's only got 5 songs, but it's modern jazz electronic album. And this is something that I'm typically into, so I decided to just pick it up in person, say hi to Nick. And in general, Athens has got some pretty great underground artists, so definitely check them out if you are into jazz. And to end it off, I've got a record called Montreux Summit, which is a collection of jazz fusion artists who met up at this summit in the French part of Switzerland. I'm not super familiar with the names, but I've learned that at the time, these are some of the greatest jazz fusion artists. I know that Stan Getz is on the album, and I'm going to mention him a bit later. If you want an experience that includes some of the greatest jazz fusion artists of all time, this is a great record to pick up. Next up, I've got Nippon Soul by Cannonball Adderley. This is categorized by hard bop, and so it's a bit more melodic than bebop. It's still improvised, but a bit of an easier listen, leaning into a bit of a bluesy or soulful direction. I was immediately drawn by the cover. I was briefly introduced by Cannonball Adderley, and so when I saw his name, when I saw the Japanese cover, when I saw that it was in good condition, I decided to get it. I got it at a local flea market here in Düsseldorf, and this was a great listen, to be honest. It was one of the first recordings in Japan by an American artist, and so yeah, this was for me an easy pickup. It wasn't too expensive either. Next up, I got a free jazz record by Charles Mingus, The Black Saint and the Sinner Lady. This is the record that popped up quite often when I was looking at all-time great jazz records. Little bit of a hard listen at first because it's free jazz, it's very improvised, little left field for the average listener. But over time I got used to it and it's an absolute banger of a jazz record. I also got this from this record store in Italy that was selling the Destination Moon records. A little bit skeptical about this version, but the disc itself is a bit weird. I don't know what it is about it, but it just feels low quality. And so this is probably not the best pressing in the world, but I'm glad I got my hands on this record. Next up, I've got a bebop jazz record. This is Charlie Parker's South of the Border. I picked this record up in Paris. I was at a Basquiat exhibition, and I learned that Basquiat had a connection with Charlie Parker, and so they featured a lot of Charlie Parker records at the gift shop, and so this one caught my eye. It's got some like green discs with a cartoon bird in the center. I thought that was quite cute. But yeah, Charlie Parker was a very well-known saxophonist, and so this record highlights his skills together with some Afro-Cuban influence. There are also some Afro-Cuban musicians, specifically on the percussion, and so you'll have a little bit of that Latin flair to this album. So if you like a little bit of upbeat jazz with some Latino influence, this is a great pickup. Moving on to the classical jazz category, I've got a couple records here. This one was a bit hard to categorize properly, so I called it classical jazz because I feel like it could be jazz on one hand, but it could also be classified as classical music. And so, starting off with Affinity by Bill Lawrence. I discovered Bill Lawrence when I attended a music festival in Düsseldorf, and I learned that he was a member of Starkey Puppy, who won a Grammy for Best R&B Record or Album. This record is just Bill playing the piano, very little editing, and so in this album he wanted to just highlight the beauty of the instrument. And so when I was watching his performance, he was hypnotized into the piano itself. It looked like it was just taking over his body, but a true performer. And after the performance, he signed some of his records, so I got mine signed as well, took a picture with him, and yeah, this was a great pickup. It's a nice little pink cover. Shout out to Bill for being such a great sport. And the next record is a pickup from my local donation store as well, Kasch and Gauss. This record is a jazz compilation of some iconic Johann Sebastian Bach compositions from Jacques Louzier. I don't know what it is that caught my eye, but I gave this record a listen and was a huge fan. I started to get into classical music this year, and so I thought initially that this was classical, but it is jazz renditions of these songs, and so it's the best of both worlds. Pretty affordable pickup on top of that. Okay. I've been doing a lot of talking. I need a sip of coffee to get me through the rest. Shout out if you made it this far. And the final category of this video, I titled non-English. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the term world music because we are all part of the world. I categorized these records if they featured vocals or influences that were outside of the English-speaking world. And so all of these, in my opinion, are classics, if not strong recommendations. And so I encourage you to step out of your comfort zone if you only listen to English music. But the more I discover this kind of music, the more it opens my eyes and my ears to all kinds of unique sounds, especially in the jazz category. First up is Troupeau Bleu by Cortex, a French jazz funk group. I picked this one up at Oye Records in Berlin. And I stumbled upon this record because they were sampled by, I believe, Madlib and MF Doom, and I think Earl Sweatshirt. So when I started listening to the album, I was like, this is a banger, so definitely check out this group. It is, in my opinion, a classic. So yeah, if you like funk, if you like jazz, this is the album to get. Next up is Soul Espanol by Oscar Peterson. So earlier this year, I was at the Amsterdam Coffee Festival and they had a few vinyl DJs and they were also selling some records. And so I saw the sticky note, it said Bossa Nova Jazz. I was like, I love that stuff. And so I gave it a little bit of a listen and decided to pick it up. This is composed by Oscar Peterson. At the time, I didn't know who it was, but I learned that he is one of the most famous Canadian jazz artists, so I definitely want to dig into his discography a bit more. This is basically a bossa nova jazz album of some popular songs like Mas Que Nada. I'm a bit confused why it's called Soul Espanol because a lot of these songs are Brazilian and they speak Portuguese, but this is a great listen if you are into bossa nova jazz. Not a super popular record, but a nice listen. Next up is, and I'm gonna read the back because it's a long one, Jazzeando El Cancionero Dominicano Volume 4 by Retro Jazz. I was in the Dominican end of last year with my family, and in Santo Domingo there's a record store called Groove.do, and this record was exclusively released at this record shop. And so I asked for jazz recommendations that are local, and the owner recommended this one. Super nice guy. If you are for some reason in Santo Domingo, check out that record store. This is a modern jazz interpretation of iconic Dominican songs, and so this is a fun listen. It feels like I'm at a concert. The vocals are great. They got a strong lead female vocalist, so this is a fun one, and I'm glad I picked this up. Next up is Paesaggi by Piero Umiliani. I picked this one up in Milan. I was at the Serendipity record store in Milan. Before I visited Milan at the time, I stumbled upon a very well-known composer for library music, which is a genre I recently learned is a genre that is intended for music in films. And at the time, it was a more accessible way of getting music for films and TV shows. If you like that laid-back jazz that's really easy to listen to, I'd recommend looking out for library music. And paesaggi in Italian means landscapes, and so the songs are referring to different kinds of landscapes all over the world. And so with this record, you'll get quite a diverse range of influences, but it's still great jazz nonetheless. So yeah, Paesaggi, one of his more well-known records, definitely give it a listen. Almost done here, but I have to end it off on a high note. This is Gets Gilberto. For those who are a fan of jazz, this needs no introduction. This has got to be one of the most famous, if not the most famous, non-English or world albums out there. This is basically the album that took American jazz and Brazilian bossa nova and just took the world by storm. And if you haven't heard of this album for some reason, you'll definitely know The Girl from Ipanema. Yeah, this is such a good listen. Like, I can play this album on repeat for the rest of my life. Probably one of my favorite jazz records ever. Stan Getz, legend in the American jazz scene. Gilberto, legend in the Brazilian scene. And the wife of João Gilberto, Astrid, she is the one that is singing on The Girl from Ipanema, which is an all-time classic song. So front to back, this album is classic. I picked this one up at Pure Soul Records in Hamburg, which I can highly recommend. If you are a seasoned record collector, I guarantee you will find something that you've never seen at Pure Soul Records. They've got some of the most obscure and expensive records I've ever seen, including 7 inches, and so definitely check it out if you are in Hamburg. And finally, the record that I've displayed this whole time is Jazz Samba by Stan Getz and Charlie Bird. This one I picked up also at Dearborn Records in Detroit. This is also one of those albums that really catapulted bossa nova into a world-renowned genre. So if you do like Gets Gilberto, you will absolutely love this record as well. I love the red cover. I love the artwork in both of these albums. It's nearly up there for one of my favorite jazz albums as well. So that wraps up my entire jazz collection. If you did like that, if you made it this far, I would appreciate a like for the algorithm. I actually excluded my Christmas collection, which could be categorized as jazz as well. So if you want to see that, I encourage you to subscribe. And if you want more bite-sized content, I'm also on Instagram and TikTok. And as always, I like to end my videos by reminding all my viewers to slow down, take a sip, and drop the needle. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.